So we're going to start out in Leviticus, and if you haven't had breakfast, maybe that's good. I don't know, because it's kind of a brutal chapter. In Leviticus chapter 1, it says, "Then the Lord summoned Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting." So this is like the very beginning of them really coming of age as a nation, and escaping Egypt, getting the law, all the stuff, right? He says, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when any of you brings an offering to the Lord from the livestock, you may bring your offering from the herd or the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to bring an unblemished male. He will bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting so that he may be accepted by the Lord. He's to lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering so it can be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him. He is to slaughter the bull before the Lord. Aaron's sons and the priests are to present the blood and splatter it on all sides of the altar, that is, at the entrance to the tent of meeting. And then he is to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priest, will prepare a fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Aaron's sons, the priests, are to arrange the pieces, the head, the fat, on top of the burning wood on the altar. The offerer is to wash the entrails and legs with water. Then the priest will burn all of it on the altar as a burnt offering, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord." It goes on in verse 10, "But if his offerings for a burnt offering from the flock, from sheep or goats," and basically it's the same process, he's to present an unblemished male. He'll slaughter it on the north side of the altar before the Lord. Aaron's sons, the priests, will splatter its blood against the altar on all sides. He will cut the animal into pieces with its head and its fat, and the priests will arrange them on top of the burning wood on the altar. He is to wash the entrails and legs with water. The priest will then present all of it and burn it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. If his offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, he's to present his offering from the turtle doves or young pigeons. Then the priest is to bring it to the altar and will twist off its head, burn it on the altar. Its blood should be drained on the side of the altar. He will remove its digestive tract, cutting off the tail feathers, throw it on the east side of the altar at the place for ashes. He will tear it open by its wings without dividing the bird. Then the priest is to burn it on the altar on top of the burning wood. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Whew. That's just like Monday, right? I mean, that was like a regular practice. The sacrificial system in the Old Testament was gruesome, a gruesome experience. Bloody picture of killing animals, gutting them, dismembering them, burning them, placing them strategically, on the altar, throwing pieces here and pieces there. It's not the kind of experience that you just take lightly and walk away from, like, oh, okay, did that, got that done with. It was meant to cost something. It was meant to leave an impression and a mark. And you just can't walk away from that like it's no big deal. There are sounds associated with this. There are smells. There are moments in this whole process that you can't take back. It becomes etched in your mind forever. And God, knowing the heart of man, puts a few rules in place as to the quality of animal that should be sacrificed. He knew if given a chance that he knows how we think. We'd think, well, I got to do a sacrifice. I might as well get rid of the one who's about ready to die anyway. Get rid of that one. Get rid of the one who's sick or something like that. And then you get kind of a 2-for-1 thing. I get to have my sacrifice and get rid of an animal I don't want. So it's a win for everybody, right? Everybody's happy. So in Leviticus 22, he says, by the way, your sacrifice is supposed to cost something. It's supposed to mean something to you. In Leviticus 22, the Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to Aaron, his sons, all the Israelites. Tell them, any man of the house of Israel or of the resident aliens in Israel who presents his offering, whether they present payment of vows or freewill gifts to the Lord as burnt offerings, must offer an unblemished male from the cattle, sheep, or goats in order for you to be accepted. You are not to present anything that has a defect. It will not be accepted on your behalf. When a man presents a fellowship sacrifice to the Lord to fulfill a vow or as a free will offering from the herd or flock, It has to be unblemished to be acceptable. There must be no defect in it. You are not to present an animal, any animal, to the Lord that is blind, injured, maimed, has a running sore, festering rash, or scabs. You may not put any of them on the altar as food offering for the Lord. In other words, don't give God your garbage. He wants the best. He wants the best. Don't get rid of something you were going to get rid of anyway and give that to God and say, look at this great sacrifice I made to the Lord. One time, King David upset God, sinned against him, and God said, here, I'm going to make you a deal. You messed up. I'm going to give you one of three choices. I sent a prophet to David, and the prophet said, God gives you three choices here. You can have 3 years of famine. You can have 3 months of enemies pursuing the people, or you can have 3 days of plague. You choose. And David's like, well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just do the 3 days of plague, and go for that. So God sends an angel of death to Israel. 70,000 people died as the angel made his way through the land. And as he reached just outside of Jerusalem, God tells the angel, okay, stop. You've done enough. Just stop right there. The angel was at a farm and at the threshing floor of a man named Araunah. And about that time, David cries out to God. So I don't get the impression that he could see the angel or anything like that. But because about this time that David cries out to God, he says, this is my sin. It's not theirs. All these people have died, and it was because of me. And it's punish me. He says, don't punish me. Don't punish the people. And the prophet tells David to build an altar on that farm. Like I said, I don't know if he knows the angel's there, but where the angel had stopped, go to that farm, you build an altar there. And so he approaches the farm, he approaches the owner to buy some land there so he can build the altar and buy some animals to sacrifice and everything. And here's the account in 2 Samuel 24. Araunah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? To buy your threshing floor, David answered, so I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plague on the people may be stopped. Araunah said to David, well, let my lord the king take whatever he pleases from him. Offer it up to here, and offer it up. Here are some oxen. Here are oxen for the burnt offering. Here are the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. O king, Araunah gives you all this to the king. So Araunah also said to him, may the Lord your God accept you. But basically he's saying, let me give you the land, let me give you the altar, let me give you the animals, let me give you the wood, let me take care of this for you. because you don't have anything with you. Let me just do this for you. Verse 24 says, but the king replied to Araunah, no, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord, my God, burnt offerings that cost me nothing. I'm not going to do that. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen, paid 50 shekels of silver for them. David built an altar to the Lord there, sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and then the Lord answered the prayer on behalf of the land. The plague on Israel was stopped. Now, interesting side note, this is the very place where Solomon built his temple. So this is like a historic spot, a big moment here. I don't know what would have happened if David would have accepted this gift to make a sacrifice that he didn't cost him anything. Who knows what that would have changed in Israel's history. But that's where the temple was built. But this is a very important principle that we need to understand here, that when it comes to our relationship with God, is that a sacrifice that costs you nothing is not a sacrifice. I mean, we all want to sacrifice, but we don't want it to really cost us, right? I mean, I wonder how many of us, myself included, would have been tempted to go like, hey, that's a good deal. I'll go ahead and take those free oxen. I'll take the free wood. Can you build the altar for me too? That'd be great, and then we'll call it good. And God would have said, no, it didn't cost you anything. I'm looking for sacrifice. I'm looking for sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice is it to get rid of an animal that you don't want anyway? What kind of a personal sacrifice would it be for David to put some strange guy's animal on the altar for God? It would be nothing. It would have meant nothing to him. It meant nothing to him. I always think it's kind of interesting when I hear Christians, debating politics, and they say they're going to vote for this person or this party or that party. And sometimes they'll say, well, because this particular candidate will help the poor and the needy, and the other one won't. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, yeah, but they're not. God didn't call them to help the poor. They called you That doesn't work. That's not your sacrifice. I mean, it might be good or bad. I'm not here to debate politics. I'm just saying that doesn't count for your sacrifice because you voted for someone who's going to help the poor. It only counts when you help the poor. We're called to personally feed the hungry and clothe the naked and so forth, right? It doesn't count when we let someone else sacrifice on our behalf. It must be our sacrifice. So maybe you're wondering right now, like, wait, aren't we in Romans? Like, what are we doing here? Well, it's important to have that context, that back knowledge, that understanding as we get into Romans chapter 12. It just helps us understand this better. Because Paul writes in Romans 12:1, therefore, brothers and sisters, in view of the mercies of God, all the things we've been talking about in Romans, all this stuff, the grace of God, the mercy he has for us, in view of his mercies, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Sacrifice. The image of dismembered animal parts laying on an altar, the smell of wood burning and flesh burning with it, the sight of blood dripping down the sides of an altar, the stench of death in the air. And Paul's telling us, God wants you to be a sacrifice. But not that kind. He wants you to be a living sacrifice. Every day, every moment, every breath. This is your life. Jesus himself said, take up your cross daily. It's part of being a sacrifice, a living sacrifice. And you have to think about it for a moment. Well, a sacrifice, like everything goes to God. You don't kill a lamb and like it's only partly, it's all dead. I mean, it's just everything. It's actually dismembered. We read all the stuff. I mean, it's like it's done, right? Everything goes to God. A normal sacrifice lays everything out on the altar. Nothing is held back. A living sacrifice is the same way, just without the death and without the blood, without the dismembered bodies. It's us every day waking up saying, this is your day, God. Every single thing that happens today is for you. Everything. Oh, sure, I go to work and I do my things and I have my relationships and I do everything. Everything's for you. It's all you. The Christian lays his or her in life on the altar of God every single day. Your time, your talent, your treasure, it's all his. Everything is his. And Paul elaborates a little bit now on what he's talking about here when he gets to verse 2 and he goes on, do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. That's part of your daily dying, part of your daily sacrifice. I'm becoming less like the world and more like God. I'm transforming. It's a whole sermon right there in itself. Don't follow the crowd. Don't do what everybody else is doing. Follow God. You follow his word. That's what part of giving yourself to him is all about. He goes on in verse 3, for by the grace given to me, I tell everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he should think. Instead, should think sensibly, as God has distributed a measure of faith to each one. Now, as we have many parts in one body, and all the parts do not have the same function in the same way, we who are many are one body in Christ, and individually members of one another. According to the grace given us, we have different gifts. If prophecy, use it according to the proportion, of one's faith. If service, use it in service. If teaching, in teaching. If exhorting, in exhortation. Giving, with giving generously. Leading with diligence. Showing mercy with cheerfulness. It's all in the context of being a living sacrifice. Being a living sacrifice. Paul's telling us some things that a living sacrifice looks like. Just a couple things today from this. The first one is a living sacrifice. If you're a living sacrifice, you're going to sacrifice your needs for the needs of others. This is what you do. We're called to step aside from our own needs. We're called as Christians to step aside from our own comforts, our own happy little world that we like to build for ourselves, and to look for ways to bless people. We exist to bless other people. It's part of being a living sacrifice. I mean, that sounds painful. I mean, what about me? What about my stuff, my needs, my things, right? It says, no. You're worried about other people's needs, other people's things. That's where your focus goes now. That's a really hard thing to hear for a lot of people when you've worked so hard to accomplish what you have in life. I mean, we're a church full of hard workers. We're a church full of people who are accomplishing things. And it's hard to think, wait a minute, that's for me. And Paul's saying, no, really, it's for them. I mean, it's for you too. But you died to all this stuff. It's for others. When you've spent your entire life making wise choices and personal sacrifices to get to where you are today, it's like, what do you mean I exist for other people? The thought of using those blessings to bless other people can be really hard to wrap your mind around sometimes. Because let's be honest, by nature we're selfish. I include myself. I mean, we're just selfish people. We naturally are that way. We cling to the things we've worked so hard to earn. We hold tight to the time that's so precious to us. I mean, most of us are busy. Our schedules are just so full. It's like I hold that so tightly and so dearly. We come up with all kinds of great reasons why we don't need to bless other people. Why would I work in the nursery? I don't have any children that age. Well, right? Why would I go to a homeless camp? Why would I bring a can of soup and put it on the table down the hall for the homeless people? I work hard for what I have. They should too. What's their problem? That thought might go through your mind. Why would I help out with the senior supper club? It's only once a month, but why? Why would I do that? My parents or my grandparents don't live anywhere near here or something. Like I can help them in any way besides Sunday nights like my night, right? When there's a football game on now, it's fall. I mean, there's so many other things to do. That's my chill night. Why help out my neighbor? I know how they live. I know why they got where they got. They deserve it. Why should I bail out my coworker? They turn my back on me every time I need bailed out. We think all those thoughts go through our mind. That's why it's called sacrifice. It hurts. You give a little something up. You would rather do something else, but you serve people instead, laying that service at the cross of Jesus. It's already gone through my mind. It's like, man, I have traditionally set aside Saturdays for Iowa Hawkeye football. At least I limit it to one. I could watch it all day long, but I limit it to one. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to miss some games this year because we'll be at homeless camps. And the selfish side of me said, wait a minute, next week we beat Iowa State. How can I gloat appropriately? We're going to lose, but that's why it's called sacrifice. Well, of course, we have interesting tools now. I can save it and watch it later. But still, you might accidentally see it on your phone. I mean, someone might give it away. It's a sacrifice. It's supposed to maybe cost you something. That's not a big thing. But if you look at my history, my entire adult life, it's going to cost me. Be a living sacrifice. That's what Christians do. We sacrifice our passions, our hobbies, our free time, our interests, our desires for people who have a greater need. And we do it with a smile on our face. Because we're willingly, freely offering ourselves to God to be his hands and his feet in this world. Paul calls that an act of worship. Oh, isn't worship when you get up with the guitar and sing songs? Well, yeah. So is living sacrificially. It's worship. This week, we had a funeral. Chris Godfrey's father passed away. I know some of you know the Godfrey, some of you don't, and that's okay. But the funeral was yesterday, and we hosted the dinner here in the afternoon. And, let's be honest, it's a pretty inconvenient weekend. People got stuff going on. A lot of people have traveled. I mean, it's a 3-day weekend. That's when you go, right? You get a freebie day. So it's a pretty inconvenient time. It's holiday. People had plans. Others are traveling. And Tricia Edema put out a request for food because we're going to do dinner for him, a little luncheon for him. And so many of you did sacrifice. You all came in, you brought stuff, and that was so cool to think you got filled up. You came forward to serve a grieving family. But nobody was available to serve the meal. And Friday night we had the car show, and we're hanging out there, And Scott Potter, he asked me, he said, well, who's working the luncheon? Who'd they find? I said, well, I am. He's like, no, I mean, who's working the luncheon? Like, well, I am. Well, how's that going to work? Well, I mean, the funeral's up at Merle Hay, and then the graveside service is right there. I'll jump in the truck, and I'll run back and unlock it and throw the food on the counter, and easy peasy, no problem. And I don't know if you know him very well, he gave me that grin. He's like, I'll be there at 10:30. and so which was cool. I mean, I wasn't complaining. I was just like, I don't know, you just work, you just do it, right? You do it. And it's holiday weekend. I don't know what he had planned. I'm guessing it included some R&R. Who knows what he had going on. Whatever it was, like during that conversation, it with joy, it changed. And he said, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. Turns out the funeral was bigger than they expected. It turns out the crowd who came to eat was bigger than they expected. We ran out of chairs, ran out of tables. So while he was serving food, I was putting up tables and chairs and running around doing stuff. And this was just a rant. I just kind of took a picture once. And if you look back there, he's got a little grin on his face. He's just loving Jesus and loving people. I told him I was going to embarrass him a little bit, so he'll be here in the second service, and he might beat me up, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. But that's what you call a living sacrifice. So many other things, he didn't know them. So many things he could have been doing. He could have said, man, that's terrible to be you. Tell me how that works out. Send pictures. He said, I'm there. And it worked just fine. Another thing living sacrifices do is how do I say that? Living sacrifice. We work together in community is the point. We work together in community. There are several spiritual gifts mentioned in this section of Scripture in Romans. You might think, what does that have to do with living sacrificially? It's kind of an odd place there, but I think it actually fits quite well. It's us giving of ourselves, serving one another, serving God, serving the community in community. Verse 6, according to the grace given us, we have different gifts. If prophecy, we'll use it according to the proportion of one's faith. He's given you the gift to preach and to teach. Well, you do that. If it's service, well, serve. Use it in service. If teaching, then teach. If exhorting, in exhortation. If giving, give with generosity. Leading with diligence, showing mercy with cheerfulness. You do it. If he's given you a gift, you use the gift for the glory of him. This is your act of worship. It's the church coming together, sacrificing their time, their talent, their resources together, serving one another. We do this all the time, all day long, every day. It happens every week. Serving God, serving the greater community as one. All the little things we do are just all these people gathering together. It's the car show, the senior meal, the block party we have coming up, the teaching that's happening right now down the hall. All these things are happening in community as we serve the greater community. Paul's saying, you have a gift, use it. Don't sit on it. Don't ignore it. Don't make excuses. Have all the reasons why you can't do it or shouldn't do it or someone else should do it. You sacrifice. And that is your worship to God, using those spiritual gifts he's given you. If your gift is serving, find a place to serve. And if your gift is serving, you probably have, and you probably do. You just do it. You don't need an official invitation. You don't need an official ministry. You don't need, I got to have a title and a label and all that. You just do. You just serve. You just serve. It's what you do. If your gift is teaching, you teach. If it's encouraging, you seek people out. You encourage them. If you have the gift of giving, you give. If your gift is leadership, you just lead. It happens naturally. It happens, but that's also your sacrifice and your part of worship. So we'll land the plane here this morning on this. And I just want you to consider for yourself, just ask yourself for the moment, are you more of a giver or a receiver in the blessing world? I mean, are you just expecting everyone, just give, I'm going to be blessed, I'm going to feel good, I'm going to all this stuff, or are you more of the giver? Are you the sacrificer in the relationship of the people around you? Does your service to God and people cost you anything? I can do this with my eyes closed. Well, do something you need to have your eyes open with. Do something that causes you a little bit of pain. That costs you a little time, a little bit of effort. Are you giving him your very best, your unblemished part of your life? Or you just kind of mailing it in? Whatever it is you do, however it is you serve. Are you giving him the leftovers? I've got this blind lamb, the scab, and all the things that it talked about, and running sores, and I got to get rid of this thing. I'll give that to God. It's just, no, that doesn't even count. I want the best. I want the best of you. If your life were laid out on the altar before God, is it a full sacrifice? Or just the parts you don't want? Just questions to ponder. God can do with that what he wants. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in view of the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship.